Then for animals, you may have to restrict their, because of the fur and so on, you may have to restrict their activities and even maybe use, your bathtub as their bathroom for a while for the first few days of the fallout. But its half-life is about 2 weeks. So if you can get through the first 2 weeks of it without ingesting it and so forth, you're probably okay. If, on the other hand, it's something like cesium-131 or 133, those are the kind of things where children need to be given the potassium iodine tablets, just so that they end up having their, being radiation-proof. People like my age, it just doesn't matter, because all you're really doing is working against cancer, not in any kind of an immediate death. But basically, you can survive fallout if we're dealing with this as is described, which is in the most extreme form in the language. It's only a finite issue. It only hangs around for the 9 passes of the jet stream, so about 18 weeks or so. It'll be horrific, but it is manageable if you're, keep your wits about you.
And we're recommending over the years about 2 to 3 drops of the Lugol's potassium iodide every day anyway, and that's a nice one to have around. Lugol's iodine. 888-663-6386. Here's an email. I want to ask Clif if the event around October 25th, could that be a false flag?
It could, but again, our thinking on that is that if that is the case, it is going to be another one of these things where the powers that be have, the Patriot Act all ready to go, all 1,000 pages of it. No one ever read the thing, and everybody signs it, 7 days after 9/11 kind of an attack. So if it were a false flag, then really the 10-day period doesn't make a lot of sense unless we're dealing with that tension for 10 days. But the period of time from there on, nonetheless, will still be as chaotic. The false flag in no way was going to redeem the crushed financial system. It's still going to collapse. We're still going to have the international chaos and so on. It'll just be under a slightly different flavor. And at the moment, we have to say that reality at this stage seems to be putting substance behind our words about the Israeli attack. So every day I see more and more flags, if you will, that's going to happen. And so it doesn't look so much like a false flag attack as it does the Israelis going crazy over Iran.
Mm-hmm. And if we use the model of what we've seen happen over the last year in the media and what they let out about Israel, it's almost the same model that we see working with this whole swine flu thing. I mean, it's like
very controlled. Exactly.
Very controlled, like it was a done. Yeah, it was like a done deal 6 months ago.
Yes, that's quite correct. And this is the scary part, of course, is because they powers that be, so that is to say that those 27 or 28 layers above the president in the security clearance. Mm-hmm. All of these individuals have a stated goal of reducing the level of the population and organizing everything under basically this feudal system with themselves at the top. And why should we not take them at their word that they're willing to do this?
So this eugenics kind of big idea, brand name eugenics, your linguistics in that, it's real.
Correct.
I mean, it's just not collapsitarian, urban rumor kind of stuff.
Correct.
888-663-6386. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Michael. I'm calling from Colorado.
Go ahead. You're on the air.
Thank you for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a couple of ideas I'd like to toss out for Mr. High. If you read the Gnostic Bibles, there's a section in the Apocalypse of Peter, and basically it's, to summarize it, it says some people are born with an eternal energy essence, and some people are not. And I'm kind of the mind that the powers that be were born without an essence, but they've learned to vampire it off the human race. I was wondering what Mr. High thought about that.
Interesting thought. That would have a tendency to go along with the idea that the gray alien, or that basically humans are interesting or special in general because we have an emotional life that other beings do not. And you see frequently references to the Greys, even going all the way back to the Nag Hammadi, about how the Greys are basically emotional vampires, and they take emotions and make energy out of it. So that's a curious thought. I had never really considered it quite that way, but it could indeed be that. You have to understand, I mean, when you have contacts with a lot of the people that work at the minion class, I acknowledge to myself that these individuals are not as other ordinary humans. And I'm not saying that, for instance, everybody in the CIA is this way, but once you get up to a certain level within the CIA, there is an attitude that is expressed in almost all the cells that would have a tendency to support that they're dealing with somebody that is in some way fundamentally sucking the life right out of them.
And there's many people that argue, ladies and gentlemen, and Cliff, that this whole idea of if you make someone fearful of what you're doing, that's the element or the paradigm that works to get juice from people. In other words, if they're afraid of you, then you are actually giving them juice or blood or whatever you want to call it. Prana.
Sure. You provide power to them. It's very evident. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it seems to work like that.
Yeah. And fear is an interesting emotion. I mean, it's so primal. It's probably one of the most that drives everybody. It's one of the highest levels of intensity emotions that we have, and it's so hard for individuals to control. But it's very much like willpower. You don't have willpower until you exercise it. The very first time you exercise it, you have all the willpower you'll ever need in your life. And with fear, as long as fear dominates you, you're under control of it. But the very first time you learn to overcome that fear, it is your servant from that point on, and it never ever need dominate you. And it's just rather curious, the first time you find yourself in a situation that you think should scare you out of your wits and you behave well, thereafter it's like, oh, okay, the next one won't be so bad, and I know I'll come through that as well. And at the same time, the fear is still there, but it then becomes your energy.
Here is an email. Cliff, it's a pleasure communicating with you. I think you deserve some noble reishi mushroom. We'll send them some. Just wanted to ask you about the ill winds from your first Shape of Things to Come report. Anything new? Thanks, and the universe bless you.
The ill winds thing, we always work in an archetype, so we work at these larger themes and move down. And the ill winds thing is still on. It gained a great deal of strength over this last processing run. We still are of the opinion that it'll be equally split between some form of nastiness as a subset of the Israelis attacking Iran and the swine flu thing going around the planet. The swine flu business doesn't appear to be really a nasty, fatal, ugly disease until January, February, and that time period.
Oh, it's gonna get ugly in the early 2010?
Correct. There will indeed be mutations, because basically what's going to happen is this. They're going to hand out live virus. They're going to shove it into millions of people. In some of those people, it's going to combine with other viral elements that are already in existence in those bodies, and it's going to be respirated out, and that's going to be a rather nasty mutant version of it. And so we will have a nasty version of swine flu, or whatever, H1N1. But you're going to be at much more risk if you get involved with the vaccine than not. And if you're not going to get involved, or even if you are going to take the vaccine, either way, boost your immune system with vitamin D and take vitamin supplements and get as healthy as you can through those period of time, because that's the point of the low level of sun in the northern hemisphere, which corresponds with immune response weakness.
Well, there's a bunch of nurses up in New York that are refusing to take the swine flu, and I think they're going to be fired. And then Massachusetts is very close to doing a mandatory vaccination. Do you think there's going to be other...
No, let's be clear about that.
Oh, they're not.
Very clear about passing the language to do a mandatory one, but it yet remains to be seen whether the powers that be and the control elements within that area have the ability to enforce it. For instance, I've gotten a lot of... People send me things now. I have a certain amount of visibility. And anyway, I got some information from counties in North Carolina where they're so broke that in order to do a quote, mandatory or even a voluntary vaccine, they have to ask for voluntary help, unpaid, from nurses and other staff. So you know that their ability to do any kind of an enforced vaccination issue is going to be way reduced. And the fears running around now that we're going to have the military come to your door and say, take this shot or we're going to shoot you with a gun, that kind of thing, are very, the fear is very high, but the foundation for that doesn't really exist. We don't have enough military. It's spread around the planet. If we hauled back every person in our military and even all the clerks and everybody and gave them all guns, there still wouldn't be enough people to enforce this in a timely fashion.
Yeah, of course. And so I guess then, what about the linguistics on the whole constitutionality of a lot of different things? Is this going to come to light?
Yeah, but it'll be as a result of us sorting through everything after the revolution.
Oh, after the post-revolution.
Yeah. At this point, it looks as though the revolution is pretty much a done deal. The pressures are going to be so great on the mass of people in the U.S. Over January, February, March of next year. And bear in mind, we're already seeing the first early stages of reactive, violent kind of activity, with that poor fellow that got hung the other day with Fed scrawled on him. It doesn't matter who did it or whatever, just the language itself is telling. And that kind of activity is going to escalate. And the poverty level that we're going to be plunged into here as the dollar dies cannot be minimized.